Welcome, weary traveler. You are just in time. Please join me for one last story. Once upon a time, there was a sweet little girl who was loved by everyone who looked at her, and most of all, by her grandmother. There was nothing that she would not have given the child. Once, she gave her a little red cap, which suited her so well that she would not wear anything else. So, she was always called Little Red Riding Hood. One day, her mother said to her,
"Come, little Redcap. There's a piece of cake and a bottle of wine. Take them to your grandmother. She's ill and weak, and they'll just do her good. Set out before it gets hot. Walk nicely and quietly. Don't run off the path, or you may fall and break the bottle. Then your grandmother will get nothing. When you go into her room, don't forget to say good morning, and don't stop to peep in every corner before you do it."
I'll take great care.
said Little Red Riding Hood to her mother, and gave her hand on it. The grandmother lived in the woods, half an hour's distance from the village. Just as Little Red Riding Hood entered the woods, a wolf met her. Little Red Riding Hood did not know what a wicked creature he was, and she was not afraid of him. "Good-day, Little Redcap," said he.
Good morning, Mr. Wolf.
"Where are you off to so early, Little Red Riding Hood?
To my grandmother's.
What have you got in your apron?"
Cake and wine. Yesterday was baking day, so poor sick grandmother is to have something good to eat, to make her stronger.
Where does your grandmother live, Little Red Riding Hood?
A quarter of an hour further into the woods. Her house stands under the 3 large oak trees. The nut trees are just below. You surely must know it.
Replied Little Red Riding Hood. The wolf thought to himself, "What a tender young creature. What a nice plump mouthful. She'll be better to eat than the old woman. I must act craftily so as to catch both." He walked for a short time by the side of Little Red Riding Hood, and then he said, "See, Little Red, how pretty the flowers are out there. Why don't you look around?" Little Red Riding Hood raised her eyes when she saw the sunbeams dancing here and there through the trees, and the pretty flowers growing everywhere. She thought,
Suppose I take grandmother a fresh bouquet of flowers. That would please her too. It's so early in the day that I shall still get there in good time.
and so she ran from the path into the woods to look for flowers. Meanwhile, the wolf ran straight to grandmother's house and knocked at the door. "Who's there?" "Little Red Riding Hood," replied the wolf. "She's bringing cake and wine. Open the door. Just lift the hatch," called out the grandmother. "I'm too weak and cannot get up." So the wolf lifted the hatch. The door flew open, and without saying a word, he went straight to the grandmother's bed and devoured her. Then he put on her clothes, dressed himself in her cap, laid himself in bed, and drew the curtains. Little Red Riding Hood, however, had been running about picking flowers. When she had gathered so many flowers that she could not carry any more, she remembered her grandmother and set out on her way. She was surprised to find the cottage door standing open, and when she went into the room, she had such a strange feeling.
Oh dear, how uneasy I feel today. And at other times I love being with grandmother so much.
So she called out,
Good morning.
but received no answer. She went to the bed and drew back the curtains. There lay her grandmother with a cap pulled far over her face, and looked very strange.
Oh, grandmother,
She said,
what big ears you have.
"The better to hear you with, my child," was the reply.
But, grandmother, what big eyes you have.
She said, "The better to see you with, my dear."
But, grandmother, what large hands you have.
"Better to hug you with."
Oh, but grandmother, what a terrible big mouth you have.
"The better to eat you with." And scarcely had the wolf said this, then with one bound he was out of the bed and swallowed up Little Red Riding Hood. When the wolf had satisfied his appetite, he lay down again in the bed and fell asleep and began to snore very loud. The huntsman was passing the house and thought to himself, "How the old woman must be snoring. I must see if everything is okay." So he went into the room, and when he came to the bed, he saw the wolf lying in it. "Do I find thee here, thou old sinner?" said he. "I have long sought thee." And just as he was going to fire at him, it occurred to him that the wolf might have devoured the grandmother. So he did not fire. So he took a pair of scissors and began to cut open the stomach of the sleeping wolf. When he had made 2 snips, he saw a little red cap. And then he made 2 snips more, and the little girl sprang out crying,
How frightened I've been. How dark it was inside the wolf.
and after that, the grandmother came out, also alive. Little Red Riding Hood then quickly fetched great big stones, which they had filled the wolf's body with. When he woke up, he wanted to run away, but the stones were so heavy that he tumbled down and fell to his death. When all 3 were delighted, the huntsman drew off the wolf's skin and went home with it. The grandmother ate cake and drank wine. She grew strong. But Little Red Riding Hood, she thought to herself,
As long as I live, I will never, ever leave the path to run into the woods. My mother has forbidden me to do so.